So it's the start of a new year and I'm here to try and stick to a resolution and get back to making videos despite my not quite faded cold, so I apologise if my voice sounds as bad as it does in my head, but here I am. At the start of a new year I think it's nice to look out at the year ahead and talk about hopes and dreams, so that's exactly what I'm here to do. Fortunately there are a few games coming out this year that I'm personally really looking forward to. I mean, we're only like a week or two away from Tokyo Mirage Sessions finally getting a port to the Switch, so I'm already happy if I'm quite honest. And if you didn't know, I'm also incredibly excited for Animal Crossing New Horizons and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. And I also think it will be a miracle if No More Heroes 3 releases this year, but I'll be very happy if it does. I'd kick myself if I didn't make a wish list for the year. These aren't really expectations, but they are games that I would really like to see in some form or another, whether it's this year or one day in the distant future. So they aren't announced, I have no idea if they will be announced, but I am hoping. Anyway, with that, let's get on with it, shall we? I know it hasn't been too long since we had WarioWare Gold on the 3DS, but I would really like to see WarioWare make its way to the Switch this year. The reason, more than anything, is that I have this unusual nostalgia for WarioWare Smooth Moves in particular. When I was in university and even a little bit before that, Smooth Moves was the game that we used to go for our multiplayer fun most of the time. We never broke out Mario Kart Wii. Playing Smash against my friends who were 5,000 times better at Smash than I was basically the opposite of fun, and I was quite possibly the worst FPS player in existence, so I was out of anything related to Halo. WarioWare was great because it was a game that anyone could play without any knowledge of what it really was. These micro games kept me and my friends entertained for probably longer than they should have, and I want that experience on the Switch pretty badly. I don't really own games like that everyone is always down to play, aside from Smash, which, like I mentioned, I'm terrible at. Mario Party kinda takes dedication and time, and I don't know a lot of people that are chomping at the bit to play 1-2 Switch, so WarioWare would fill a nice little void that I have in my library. I know that this is probably one of the less popular opinions that I'm about to have, but you know, Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors, yeah, I love those games. I love them a lot and I've spent an unhealthy amount of time playing them. While I'd love to see another Fire Emblem Warriors or, you know, an actual sequel to Hyrule Warriors with Breath of the Wild characters like Sidon and the Champions, I'm just gonna leave this one vague and say that I'd like to see a new Warriors game with a Nintendo skin. Now, I get it. These games aren't for everyone. To me, they're very much how I would describe like a junk food game. You know it's not good for you, you know you could be playing something better and more substantial, but it's just kinda fun to have a game that you can switch off to and not pay any attention to whatsoever. These games aren't hard or particularly challenging, but they are games that I go back to when I feel like doing something that doesn't require much thought or effort. As for what Nintendo skins I'd like to see in a Warriors game, well, I don't really know. Well, since we are talking about a dream scenario here, I wouldn't mind a stupid, dumb version of Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm also aware that we're getting Persona 5 Scramble on the Switch at some point soon, but that doesn't fill in the Nintendo crossover void that's currently in my life. I'm not going to talk at length about this because I know it's not going to happen, but do you know how long I've wanted an FZero game? Because I've been asking for one since the Wii was a current thing. I know that people who haven't played FZero aren't really going to get why I want one so badly when we have like 2 whole Mario Kart 8 courses based on Mute City and Big Blue, and we have the Blue Falcon in there, so why has my need not been fulfilled? Well, F-Zero GX is just a game I remember very fondly. I either got it for my 13th birthday or Christmas or something, and I loved everything about it. I loved that one song on Captain Falcon's profile, I loved the courses and how well they were designed with the speed of the game in mind, and I just loved that story mode that I could never beat because I was either bad or that story mode was very difficult. I just think we're well past due for a new F-Zero game, and I want one so desperately that I can't put it into words. No one is asking for new gimmicks when they're asking for a new F-Zero game, and the lack of inspiration seems to be the main excuse for why this franchise has been dormant for 15 years. All we're asking for is a new racing game that feels fast and makes you feel kinda badass when you play it. So last year we had the Detective Pikachu movie that seemed to have some pretty incredible success, but I have to admit, although I've seen the movie, I have not played the original 3DS game. I can't go super into why I want one and how mechanically I think it would work or anything like that, but I can say that it feels like making a new Detective Pikachu game might be something that's worth doing considering how people seem to kind of adore that movie. I just want the opportunity to play one on my Switch because I have to admit, I've not felt much desire to pick up my 3DS recently, and I'm not in the mood to start expanding that collection right now. There's nothing else to this at all. Okay, so here is one I could talk about pretty in depth, and I know that Star Fox Zero has pretty much destroyed any interest in this series that there was a few years ago, but I love Star Fox. I grew up with Lilac Wars, my adventure game of choice was Star Fox Adventures, my multiplayer game of choice when I was in school was Star Fox Assault. You have to understand that my love of Star Fox goes back decades, and my love will not falter despite the fact that Star Fox Zero was, well, kinda bad. I'd actually love to make a video one day about Star Fox Zero because I definitely don't think that game is all bad, but it really wasn't the game that I've been dreaming of for a decade. So I'm still dreaming of the day when we get a new Star Fox game that isn't a total gimmick and doesn't have forced motion controls. I'm still dreaming of a game that isn't a Star Wing remake for the umpteenth time, and I'm still dreaming of a game where they reinstate Crystal into the Star Fox canon. So I want a new Star Fox game, and I mean a new game. I'd love to see a game where we could have those space missions and dogfights with Star Wolf and branching paths that relied on finding secrets throughout the stages, but I'd love to see them mixed in with sections where we can explore places like Corneria on foot to achieve some goals that require more thought than shoot the glowing weak point. I'd love to run into old characters like Crystal and Cat and Bill. Anyway, I'd like a revitalized Star Fox game. It needs to change, and I know that, but motion controls were not the change that I had in mind. And no, even though the game is pretty good and does indeed come with an R-Wing toy, I don't consider Starlink Battle for Atlas a fill-in for Star Fox. So apparently Nintendo have now decided that Zelda is going to be their yearly franchise, and I have to assume that we have Breath of the Wild to thank or blame for that. Of course my hope is that Breath of the Wild 2 comes out this year, but I'm not incredibly hopeful for it. I mean, I understand that the engine is all working and in place, and the sequel is probably not going to take 5 years to make, but there is probably going to be a Zelda game this year, and I want to talk about what my ideal situation would be should Breath of the Wild 2 not make its way into our hands before the end of the year. Simply put, there are 2 HD remasters that are sat as exclusives to the Wii U, rotting away because the install base was so terrible, but they were good remasters, and I really want to see them on the Switch. Of course, I am talking about the Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD. They were great games that feel kind of wasted on the Wii U, despite the fact that the gamepad utility was pretty great. If I was to pick my dream scenario, it would be these 2 games bundled together for the price of one, because the amount of times that Twilight Princess has released at full price is actually criminal at this point. But really, I'd be more excited if we got the Wind Waker HD on the Switch. If I'm honest, even though Breath of the Wild came very close, the Wind Waker is still my favourite Zelda game. I think the story and characters are what's keeping it in that illustrious first place position for me, and it's a game that I basically will always go back to. Like a comfort blanket. It's safe and fun, and if you give me the opportunity to play that game on an actual handheld console, I think I'll be content for a good long while. But really though, bundle Twilight Princess HD with it. I'm not buying it for a 4th time if you insist on releasing it separately. I'll be honest, I initially did the layout for this video a long time ago, so this is not an interesting take considering that we had news that we might be getting a Fire Emblem game pretty soon. Fire Emblem has been doing pretty great in recent history, with the continued success of Fire Emblem Heroes, Fire Emblem Three Houses selling far better than anyone could anticipate, and Tokyo Mirage Sessions coming out very shortly on the Nintendo Switch. The interesting thing about Three Houses is that its development wasn't entirely handled by Intelligent Systems. Instead, they focused on story and design, and Koei Tecmo's Ko Shibusawa studio did the bulk of development. So it wouldn't be absurd to think that maybe we'll be seeing something Fire Emblem related sooner than we think. That or a Paper Mario game that everybody will be painfully disappointed by. But like I said, this is a list about dreams, and basically, I'm dreaming of another installment in the Echoes series because I still believe it's a series. I'd really love to see a remake of not 1, but 2 games bundled into one. Genealogy of the Holy War and Thracia 776 never made their way to the West officially, yet somehow they're still beloved amongst the Fire Emblem community, Genealogy in particular. I think that since these games are linked in some ways, it would be a great idea to put them into one package that I'm calling the Yggdrasil Collection. And yes, I'm saying it like that, I'm from Europe, and I also say this guy's name like Jagan, so come for me. To try and put it simply, Genealogy comes first in the series but has a time skip, and in that time skip is where Thracia takes place, though it's on a different part of the continent as far as I'm aware. And when I say that I want them in a collection like this, I don't mean that they should sandwich Thracia into the middle of genealogy either. I mean, they should be separate games that I can choose from a menu. I just want them bundled together so that I can experience the entirety of the Yggdrasil story without huge gaps in release dates. In addition to that though, I'd like to say that if there are changes that need to be made to maps or gameplay mechanics, I would want them to do those. The problem with Shadows of Valentia was that it was a great game that had really dated map design, so you'd spend endless turns moving your army across the map to just start getting them into combat, which is, you know, the point of Fire Emblem. The maps just made the game feel ridiculously slow, and if there are flaws that need fixing, I'd rather them be fixed than them trying to stick as close to the original as possible for the sake of nostalgia and authenticity. But you know, I've been kind of spoiled by recent Fire Emblem games. I'd want the game to be voiced, for sure. One of the best things about Three Houses was its voice cast, because they were just wonderful at their jobs. I'd want animated cutscenes, but not just by any studio. I could absolutely get my animation nerd on and compare the studios that have worked on Fire Emblem before, but I'd absolutely love to see the return of Anima, the studio who worked on the cutscenes for Fire Emblem Awakening and Fates, and have done, as far as I know, every animated trailer for Fire Emblem Heroes. In my mind, their animation is smooth, beautiful, and their models are spectacular. While I do respect their work, neither Studio Kara or Sansagan have really come close to what Anima have achieved, at least for me. I'd really want them to go all out and make a great remake. To be honest, I really wouldn't mind if they chose to remake the remake of Shadow Dragon and do that game some justice. And I certainly wouldn't mind if they chose to remake any of the GBA games either, but at the same time, I would really love to play Genealogy for the first time. I do think it'll happen one day, and I know I have more Three Houses content coming out this year, but I really love Fire Emblem and I kinda just want more of it. So, all in all, that's kind of it. I don't ask for a lot, do I? So I guess we'll regroup at the end of the year and see if any of this stuff actually happened, and if it didn't, I guess I'll just repost this video with a new title at the start of 2021. Don't forget to let me know what you're hoping for this year, whether it's Nintendo related or whatever you want to tell me about. I hope you all have a fabulous 2020, and I'll see you soon.